So the title this morning is the Strive for Truth, Insights from Rav Dessler and the Maharal concerning, today the subject will be in connection with the prophecy of Moshe Rabbeinu. So, if I'm basing this on the text which we already began to study, where if you will look at the bottom of the first column, on page 452, the fifth section, Decalogue. So, we know that all the prophets, as we have in the Tanakh, in the Bible, they saw Hashem, they had visions, revelations from Hashem, with a glass, lenses that did not light up the full truth, they were not transparent. Which we explained on the basis, if a person looks at the sun when it's in midday, summer, strong sun, and he looks at the sun without special tinted lenses, it will blind him. That's why it says constantly, no person can see me and live. Which today we can understand a bit better when there are millions of people who record a near-death experience, when they also enter in a dimension of light that's not of this world. So that's the easiest parallel we can give to understanding Aspaklaria She'enu Me'ira. But Moshe Rabbeinu hasn't even described in the Chumash. For 3 times 40 days he was receiving revelations from Hashem without food and drink. So he was able to have a connection with Hashem, Aspaklaria Me'ira, in this world. He was still a body. He was able to have connection at high level. Hence we can also understand that when he came down to the mountain, that there were rays of light coming from his face. And I'm going to, word for word, explain at the bottom of this page, 452, Mabat Sheliyat said, Aval Aldei Anava, Zu Nitgala Moshe Rabbeinu Alav Shalom. Moshe, we know, is referred to in the Chumash as the most humble person. His humility was a nullification of his own self. And that raised him to the highest level of recognizing the power of Hashem, getting direct prophecy. So it says, he reached the Madreka Teveku. Now it says in the Chumash also that through the power of the Torah, the people of Israel, Atem Adveikim Hashem Elokeichem Chaim Kolchem Hayom. Those of you who cling to Hashem, you live a total life. Because you're connected with the source of life. So this is said concerning the people of Israel as a whole, that personally to reach that highest level of Decalogue, no human beings have been able to reach that Decalogue that they see Hashem while they're still living. But Moshe Rabbeinu was able to re'iyah was baklari amira, bechinat panim befanim. They were able to see, as it were, Hashem face to face with a transparency. Shalev aseichel mekablim yachad tzurat inyanim. When the feelings and the highest feelings and the highest intelligence receive knowledge, beli ikuv v'ivut mitzad hamidot, without any form of lack of clarity and crookedness from a person's own moral feelings. He's so pure, so selfless, that he nullified in front of Hashem. ואז רצה משה לעלות להשגת כבוד Hashem. When he reached this highest level, then he asked Hashem, please show me your total honor. That means, show me, we say, Meloch ha'aretz kavodo, whatever happens in the earth is an expression of the glory of Hashem. Ki higia ledargat bitul hayesh, he had reached the level of nullification of the self, his own existence. V'nitknu etzlo amidot legamri. As a result, his personality with its specific garments, middle means a garment, there is specific aspects of his own character, they were of no power in his understanding. He was so far removed from the slightest trace of self-pride. V'yergish שהשגות אלו צריכות לעבודתו, and he felt, if I've reached this level, I need this level to be able to fulfill my task on this earth. As it said before, why do I want you to show me your full glory, for me to understand how you, the one who has a complete knowledge and also in complete control of whatever is happening, so I feel I have to try to ask for you to give me more complete understanding. That I will find favor in your eyes. Surely that's what you're asking me to do. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to him, he reached this high level, so now, I don't want to reveal it to you. Why? There's no possibility to do this, because you've reached this limit. You can't go further as long as you're still in a body. Creation, constant creation, is a revelation of the will of Hashem. So he said, so therefore, as it says in this passage, later in Pasuk Kitisa, no human being can see me and live. It's only possible to have this higher, pure spiritual understanding of Hashem when you're no longer a creature in body. To reveal this matter, this ipso nullifies the basic hiddenness, which is the situation of anything which is created. Because the one that's created, even the highest level, cannot be as great as the Creator. The Creator is even greater. And that is why you can't completely understand His greatness whilst you're still attached to physical life. Even though Moshe was different, that for 120 days and nights, his body was at the top of Mount Sinai, but he was not living there as a normal human being. He lived without food and drink, without sleep as well, would appear. He was at the highest level when Hashem revealed the whole Torah to him. So, I think, as I said, how one understands this. There are many things in the Torah which one perhaps couldn't understand so easily as today. With the progress of a wide scientific progress, as we say in Asher, generation after generation can increase, Shevach means to increase, can increase the truth, the understanding of the actions of Hashem. So I think the simple parallel which applies to human side could be applied also to the spiritual side of the human being. Human side on the physical level is also limited. The person will look at the sun, the midday hot sun, without having opaque lenses, they become blind. So we see you've got to can only look at it with very thickly covered protective lenses. Then you can manage and go and see it. What we say with sight and insight are somewhat connected, but through what we see we also gain insights, we gain inner understanding. The understanding is also so. To look at the light, as it's described today, this is another aspect which we can understand better. It is really, amazing to study today the records of millions of people who were clinically dead and then were resuscitated, and they express entering, after it's going through a dark tunnel, a light which they don't experience in this world at all. And then they reach a state when they continue with a spiritual personality, whilst at the same time they still know frequently what's going on this earth, although they're clinically dead. And they say this light is something so exceptional. It's not a light you can see on this earth. And when you read, for example, this proof from heaven by somebody called Professor Alexander, who was a professor of brain surgery. That was his particular area, and he regarded all these reports as being hallucinations, illusions, until it happened to him. It happened to him, which is just unbelievable. He went to a different world and came back, was resuscitated. And he tried to still explain whatever experiences he had as maybe being illusory, but he couldn't do it. So now he's got a website where he finds many allies. And I was amazed by the following myself, from my own personal meetings with people, that I just saw, this is very interesting, just happened to see that always been friendly with the Lord Saxon. He's a very great thinker. He was the chief rabbi of the United Kingdom. I knew him from the days when he was a student in Cambridge. And yesterday, I haven't read all the books he gave me, some different books he's given me. So one of his books is called The Letter in the Scroll, which is a bit autobiographical. The Letter in the Scroll is really based upon Midrashic comment that every Jew is the letter in the Sefer Torah. So, of course, he develops this with his philosophical background. So there he writes also when he came to Cambridge, from the average British, I would say, traditional approach to Judaism, but he was so overwhelmed by the whole environment and spirit of Cambridge. He started philosophy, and he writes there that one of his things he mentions that he was a professor in Cambridge and also a professor in London called Professor Eyre. This Professor Eyre, he was the main exponent in his time, going back to about 50, 60 years, of what's called logical positivism, which says that the only reality that exists is what you know through sense perception and through the logical faculty. They tried to, as it were, develop a concept of scientific language based entirely upon these principles, and it's actually based upon Wittgenstein, who was the founder of what's called logical positivism. He also came to Cambridge and gave his lectures there. And this Wittgenstein, really, he knew nothing about Judaism, but he was a very deep philosopher. And the philosophy, in the words of Professor Eyre, how he's lectured about it, he said that the soul and life after death and altogether freedom of the human being, it's all an illusion. And the reality is the human being is part of the scientific world as we understand it, not different basically to any of the other creatures of this world. It was really, people often, when they went to his talks, it was a debunking of religion and also the soul. So, it's also a lecturer at University College in London, where I studied. It's Professor Eyre. And I took a course of his lectures. But I challenged him on many things. Because the whole essence of logical positivism, I sometimes call it illogical negativism. Why? Because if you go with a dogma, an axiom, nothing exists except what you know through a logical faculty and from sense perception. There's no way that you can prove this basic axiom. Axioms can't be proven. You're going with that assumption, but you've got no real proof. It's a vicious circle. It reminds me of what it says in Tehillim, Ani amati b'chovzi kol adam kozev, we say in Hallel. I said in my haste that every human being is a liar. So like this, why was it in my haste? Because if I say every human being in every statement is a liar, it's a lie. Which a person could challenge, say it's not true. What proof do you have that what you're saying is true? You've got no proof, therefore you're a liar. Therefore this statement itself is also a lie. Yeah? But I'm also telling a lie when I say everybody's a liar. Therefore a person's got to start in that manner and say, I'll only accept that which is 1,000% proven, you can't prove that statement. So therefore, that's why it's in my haste. Don't make such hasty statements. And that's a little bit one of the criticisms, and I found it also confirmed by others, against logical positivism, which had a negative effect upon many thinkers. Bertrand Russell was also greatly influenced by logical positivism. And Wittgenstein himself, in his book, which is the basic classic work on logical positivism, he divides his book into 7 chapters. Very famous, this. So 6 chapters, he says there's no other reality. He brings different arguments why there's no reality. The only reality is what? It's sense perception, which has to be governed by logic. Which means it's got to fit in with your mathematical formula and your logical formula. And then you can regard it as truth, and everything else is illusion. At the end of the 6th chapter in this book, this person, Professor Eyre, Professor Eyre's teacher, Wittgenstein, he says, when you reach the 6th level, then you've gone up a ladder, finding the truth, and then you feel you've got to throw away the ladder. It's no longer relevant. And the 7th chapter is, in fact, he wrote this book, he was from Austria, he wrote this book in German, with das, was man sprechen kann, muss man schweigen. Of that which you can't talk, you've got to remain silent. So this Wittgenstein was a logical positivist in scientific analysis, which is debunking of philosophical discussions, but he was a mystic as well. He became a mystic. He said it's a different dimension. And subconsciously, his book demonstrates the deepest significance of the first chapter of the Chumash. That's exactly what it says, Chumash. 6 days of creation. The 7th day, Shabbat Hashem Elokecha. It's a different dimension. And then I'll tell you something. So this lecturer, he was very upset that I challenged him on many things. So I asked, he said, really, I must have a talk with you. So I came to his office. He said, look, I already asked good questions and so on, but too many questions. I was pretty persistent, because I saw so many of the students, they lost their faith in God by going to that lecture. So he asked me, please will you stop asking so many questions? And also I've got another objection, he said. Why do you come to the lecture with a skull cap? So I said to him, I said to him, according to your theory, why are you upset? It's predetermined. According to you, everything's predetermined. It's predetermined I should ask you questions. And predetermined I come with a skull cap. I can also see you don't have objections with the Indian students come with the Indian term. That didn't bother him. So this bothered him. So he got a bit more angry with me. Okay, so I don't want to go into disturb to that extent. I respected him. Anyway, this is very interesting. I gave then I remember giving a talk when I was in Johannesburg to the chief Decalogue there was Osameach, who invited me to give a talk on freedom and determinism, a question which we often discuss here. So there, I quoted this issue, I quoted this episode with Professor Eyre. So the chairman was that time, was the chief rabbi of South Africa called Rabbi Harris, Cyril Harris, a close friend of mine, because he also worked at the colleges, universities in England before he became chief rabbi in South Africa. So he said that it's interesting in his remarks he made after my talk. He said, he said he gets the London Observer. The London Observer is a more intellectual weekly newspaper. And there, Professor Eyre wrote an article that he had just had a near-death experience, and he has to recant his previous philosophy because the experience was so strong, and all his life he'd really lectured the soul is an illusion, but now he can't say that anymore because he had such a soul experience of reality and certainty in the near-death experience that he was giving it up. He said, there must be a soul. I think he even mentions, then he wrote another article, don't comment it, he backed down on his previous situation. So today really we do have, you see when a person like this Professor Alexander, or this Professor Eyre, a near-death experience changed the whole outlook upon life. So we have this in our time to understand a little bit what we're told about Moshe Rabbeinu. Moshe Rabbeinu thought, look, I want to try to understand the full glory of Hashem, because there's so many things that happen in the world that I can't understand. The main problem is why do saintly people suffer? If God is a source of goodness and virtue, why do virtue? And he said, to understand it completely, not possible. And why do I say this? Because this, I think this is the answer also. Moshe Rabbeinu, his situation, I mean, he also pleaded with Hashem. For him, the most terrible punishment was that having gone through so many different challenges in his youth, and then reaching this highest level, that being the prophet of Hashem, and one who was the messenger of Hashem to break down the whole Egyptian idolatry and the whole of power, and then to lead the people of Israel to where to Eretz Israel. It's always, you've seen the whole of Moshe Rabbeinu said, well, when they sinned at the golden calf, he said, I feel myself only of value through the people of Israel. That means I feel that I am your messenger to go and fulfill the blessing he gave to Avraham Avinu, and now I don't know what's going to happen. And even at the end of his life, he pleaded, let me please go in the land. No, I can't go in the land. Even Moshe Rabbeinu was given foresight. It's going to be a difficult time. If you will, so we said, if you will all do teshuvah, if you would have done teshuvah, it's the implication, you could have taken the people of Israel, if they would never have sinned the golden calf, and they would have continued after the giving of the Torah, would have taken them straight to Eretz Israel, would have built the Beit HaMikdash, which is mentioned in the Song of Moses. It says, the Mikdash of Hashem, and the whole world could have seen the fulfillment of the promise to Avraham Avinu. But now I see it might take a long time. So that was one of his greatest aspirations, that he should be able to see it. And he says, I see it not becoming fulfilled. But he meant it also in a wider sense. It's not because of me, it's because the whole world. Is sin still going to rule? So this is very difficult. Now, you have any questions? Or comments?
Can you explain more about logical negativity? Logical positivity. What does that mean?
Well, in the schools of philosophy, it means that any statements which people make which are not firmly based on sense perception plus mathematical and logical faculties can't be regarded as absolute truth. That's what they want to claim. Yes.
So, does it mean it's either going to be black or white and there's no shades of grey? Is that...
Well, they're different. I'm saying that there are different ways in which is used. Some people say logical positivism is a possibility, but they won't take it as certainty. You know, they still say it's an approach to reality, but it still leaves problems. Some people admit that. Some people regard it as being absolute truth. Let's say Bertrand Russell, he debates it. He was a disciple of Wittgenstein. Wittgenstein himself, according to many of his disciples, he regarded it as a reality on the basis of measurements a human being can make. But he did not regard it, that he regarded it as not an absolute reality. The absolute reality is beyond science. It's beyond measurement. He became a mystic. Many of his disciples claim. But in a certain way, but not so different to power worship, which was very strong in the Middle East and also the land of Canaan. So they thought the reality is the power of nature. And therefore we have to worship the power of nature. The ancient times it took its form, even worshipping the different powers of nature. Say this is reality. This is one of the constant philosophical questions. Even some who accept there's the power of God, but still there's an equal power of nature, which is that which we can investigate with the human mind more easily. That's the reality. And Hashem is also a reality. So they worship God, they worship Hashem. Or Aristotle, on a far high philosophical level, because he also wrote the book of ethics, he understood this basic ethical dimension to life. It comes out, it's a brilliant work, his work on ethics. And he regarded, but his works on science, scientific philosophy, establish nature as a power, which is eternal in his view. It's an eternal power, and God is eternal power. They exist side by side.
But
that's his point. And you have reflections of it in present day books on philosophy of modern science. So there are many scientists who will say the ultimate reality is God, who is above nature. But there are many that still say, although investigation of science investigates the mind of God, who's above it all, but when you really want to understand the world, we have to use our technological, scientific development faculties to investigate the world through not just the telescope and the microscope, but go to such analysis of matter that brings us to find the reality behind matter is a world of nuclear forces. In other words, that all aspects of the material world are ultimately based upon the electron, the nucleus. And and this produces different forces that produce a world which we see as being solid. But the solid world, as White had put it, the concrete world has slipped through the meshes of the scientific net. It's no longer concrete. But it appears concrete. We feel it's concrete. And there we come to the solution of the concrete world is not what it appears to be in reality. But we feel it in a concrete manner. So maybe we'll continue with some further paragraph.
Question?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. The Decalogue, the first commandment that God has taken Jewish people out of Egypt. The Torah starts with Bereshis. There's a prime cause, created everything. The universe, inanimate matter, life, everything. So the Torah starts with Bereshis. Why wouldn't the first commandment be relating to Bereshis? That therefore I have created everything, and therefore I also have brought you out of the land of Egypt. Why not the prime cause rather than an event in history?
There was a great French philosopher, Pascal. You heard of him, Pascal? Very great thinker, very great thinker. So he also writes.
What's his name? Pascal what?
Pascal. First name. One's first name. So he had carried in his pocket a statement where he says, the God of Abraham, Isaac and Jacob, and not the God of the philosophers. And then it takes it from the Kuzari. So your question, it takes this from the Kuzari because he read widely, but the Kuzari was as follows. In fact, I don't know if you heard of a very famous novelist who also then wrote a bit more books on research called Arthur Koestler, Thieves in the Night. You heard of him? It's a great novelist. Generation ago. So he also wrote a book on the Khuzaris, because there's a lot of historical research on them. That they lived about 1,500 years ago, a group in the Ural Mountains, and the king of this tribe, quite a large tribe, he was a searcher for truth and tried to find out the truth. And in the end, the search for truth, he would invite great scholars to come discuss religion. And in the end, he decided he wants to become a Jew. And there are letters between him and Chasai Kreskas, one of the greatest Jewish thinkers in the time of the golden period, Spanish Jewry. And it turns out many of them became Jewish. Arthur Koestler, in his research, based upon many different documents, says a great section of European Jewry, they really stem from the proselytes from this Russian tribe. So Yehuda Halevi, who lived in the 11th century, the Common Era, so he wrote a work similar lines to the dialogues of Plato. You know Plato, great Greek philosopher, And his main philosophical work in the form of a dialogue. Questions and answers on ultimate truth and morality. He was a disciple of Socrates. So, similarly, Yehuda Levi, in his time, there were certainly many non-Jews seeking what is the truth. It was a golden period in Spanish Jewry, to a great extent, who, despite there were a lot of ups and downs, frequently the Jews were persecuted, other times, at least the intellectuals amongst the Jews and the Muslims, were on a pretty high level. And both the big intellectuals were very keen to make progress in science and also in philosophy, and the Jews, some of them, were also great in their investigation of scientific progress in every area, astronomy, philosophy, and all the sciences. And many Jews, they read the works of the Muslim the thinkers, as well as the translations into Arabic of the Greek thinkers. And some of the traditions were in Latin, many of the Jews also knew Latin. So he wrote this book, the Kuzari. We have it in English also in the library. And it's a very good work to understand what he called the basis of Torah thought. So he says that this king, he asked a Christian thinker, a Muslim thinker, and one who was very much versed in Greek philosophy, to tell him what is the truth. According to the way he puts it, this king, he had a regular dream in which he was told, you know, your intentions are good, but your actions need improvement. And that dream came to him all the time. He wanted really to understand what was the significance of that dream. So he wanted to find out more about reality, who is God, and what is the right path of life. In the end, he was more attracted by the Jewish version than anybody else. This is how it's put in the dialogue. But one of the first questions that this king asks the Jewish sage is your question. Why do the first words of the Decalogue say, I am God who took you out from Egypt? It should have said, I am God who created you in the whole world. That comes first. That was his question. You'll also find it, if you look in the classical commentaries, Ibn Ezra is one of the most deep, both grammatical and both conceptual commentaries on the whole of the Bible. And he quotes this. I think Ibn Ezra was somewhat related to Yehuda Levi. He lived in almost in the same period. So he also brings this question. So what was the answer? The answer to his question is that, as it was understood also by Pascal, this French philosopher, that especially we can understand the answer better through the parallels we've brought between the 10 plagues and the 10 words, the 10 commandments, as they're generally known. In other words, Hashem, creation, is announced in Bereshit, but in a way it's also connected with a hint. Many things in the Torah, the hint expresses it in quite a clear manner. You know that the Bereshit So the Torah begins with a beit. But the origin of truth is the aleph. The aleph is really a hidden consonant, because there's no pronunciation, but it's the beginning. The beginning of what? The beginning of God's revelation. Because nobody witnessed creation. We do see, if you look carefully, we do see constant creation. But it's easy for a person, when he comes into this world and he sees the world around him, just take the world for granted. If he doesn't ask the question who, then he sees fantastic phenomena surrounding him, but he needs sometimes someone to direct him to what, perhaps to answer the question, what is it? He just needs to use his eyes and his mind to look what's around and develop his natural sense of curiosity and find out what makes it work. He sees many different forces in nature. But really, to understand what's going on, he didn't see creation, and it could be, like even some would say today, there's continuous creation, and there was no singularity. And there was no case where it began at a certain point, a Big Bang. No, it's gone on. Time is eternal. You can send time backwards and forwards. So therefore, time has always existed, and creation has always existed, and you don't know who the creator is. And with their process of continuous creation, and there are many, today continuous creation is a popular term in science, but some people will interpret it, continuous creation, and they even deny the Big Bang, they deny the singularity. Wait on forever, like Aristotelian theory. He said nature always existed. But how do we know that someone who controls it? That's what Hashem says. Anochi Hashem Elokecha. You, other people will say, no one ever, even according to what is written, the Chumash, and what we know from human beings, what the human beings thought, there might have been a creator, there might have been all types of forces, prehistoric forces that produced, there might have been what's called the nebula theory, all types of explosions. And these went on non-stop. And time is continuous. And therefore, the cataclysms that produced the globe as we see it today could have been worlds in collision. As some say worlds in collision, but going on all the time in the galaxies, in the millions of stars that we find exist. So this has been going on. Who said it didn't go on forever? And who said? So therefore, Hashem says it's different. The world is not just a process that goes on forever. It doesn't make it, therefore, it's just happenings that happen. Therefore, there's no one to tell you what to do. And you can't change anything. Everything goes on and on all the time. It's also happenings. Who says there's a special pattern, a special mind that wants to develop a good world, a bad world? But that's what the Aseret HaDibrot teach us, that I took you out from Egypt. If you read the 10 Makot more deeply, you see there's not just the pattern in the nature around us, there's a pattern in human history. And there's so many non-Jewish great thinkers. Many of them started as atheists. Like Nicholas Badiayev, The Meaning of History. He was a completely agnostic. He followed entire Marxist concepts and concepts of evolution, and denied the existence of a God. What changed him? The study of Jewish history. When he studied Jewish history, he said, it can't be explained. What happened to these people? H.G. Wells, who was when I was a teenager, I mean, his works on short history of the world, his works that dealt with science and philosophy, he was kind of secularist. By a short history of the world in the middle, he says himself, when you come to the Jewish field, you can't explain it anymore. There must be some spiritual power at work that allows the Jewish people with their teachings to continue, and with their spiritual message that seems to give them constant overcoming of all attempts to destroy them. And this concept is growing amongst many of the deeper thinkers. They see the Jewish people as different. So it's not saying, so the Koestler's answer is also, he says, the historical approach to understand the power of Hashem has more significance for the human being than the speculative approach. Because speculation, you can speculate and think over what's the best explanation, how everything began, and who's the mind behind nature. Okay? But does that mean that you've got a chance to improve this world? I mean, the Aseret Dibra is a moral challenge coming from Hashem. Now, when it was given to the people of Israel, there was such a minute part of the human population, they must have thought many of the things mentioned and the importance of remembering this code of the Aseret Dibra for all mankind. It says that in the Chumash, it's meant for all mankind to learn from it. So at that time, it must have been understood as something very fanciful. I had to hope it might happen in the future, but they didn't see it. They were surrounded by idolaters and corrupt people who didn't believe in anything, didn't believe in prophecy, didn't believe in one God. So therefore, they must have thought it's just a fanciful point. But we today, after so many thousands of years, we see the Decalogue has more relevance today, what's happening, than any other text in the world. It's of great importance, and also has a great power. And the Jewish people, with our spiritual essence, have a great power. And really, that's the most important thing, most important aspect to emphasize in our time, when there's so many distortions around. And we on our side have to fulfill more than ever to know that we're here to spread the light of the Torah to the nations of the world. And if it would appear, if we do that, it will also strengthen those amongst the nations of the world, especially intellectuals, to recognize the significance of the survival of Israel. Okay. To be continued. I might tomorrow try and bring the text.
How's the Shabbat in your island?
I'll try to bring the text from the Koestler.